Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Healthcare Horizons podcast. We're going to dive into a fascinating topic that bridges psychology, development, and clinical practice, the pathologic development in Freud and Erikson's theories. So, what does that mean? At the core, both Freud and Erikson believe that human development happens in stages. At each stage, we face a conflict or task. If that conflict isn't resolved, the unfinished business carries forward as what we might call residual pathology. Think of it like baggage. You drag it into the next stage, and it shapes your struggles throughout life. Clinically, this is powerful. It helps us trace the roots of pathology, guide therapy, and strengthen how we formulate cases in a biopsychosocial spiritual way. Infancy, birth to 18 months. Freud called this the oral stage, centered on feeding and object relations. Erikson, meanwhile, framed it as trust versus mistrust. The key virtue here is hope and the ability to give and receive. But if trust isn't built, pathology shows up as mistrust, depression, hopelessness, and even dysthymia. Projection can take over, leading to paranoia or schizoid personality traits. People may feel empty, turning to substances, dependency, or thrill-seeking to fill that void. Toddlerhood, 18 months to 3 years. Here we hit Freud's anal stage, all about control, and Erikson's conflict of autonomy versus shame and doubt. The healthy outcome is independence and willpower. But pathology develops when shame and doubt dominate. That can mean obsessive personality traits, feelings of dirtiness, or paranoia about being controlled. Harsh toilet training can manifest later as compulsions or excessive cleanliness. Too much control leads to stubbornness and rigidity, while too little brings messiness or sadomasochistic tendencies. Mix mistrust with shame and doubt, and you'll get persecutory delusions. Early childhood, 3 to 5 years. Freud emphasized the phallic stage, Oedipal conflicts, gender identity, and the superego. Erikson called this initiative versus guilt. The healthy path is developing conscience, purpose, and values. But unresolved guilt leads to anxiety disorders, phobias, sexual inhibition, and even conversion disorders. If kids are punished too harshly for impulses, they may internalize guilt and struggle with psychosomatic illnesses. School age, 5 to 13 years. Freud described this as the latency stage, where children master skills and strengthen the superego. Erikson called it industry versus inferiority. Success builds competence, but failure creates feelings of inadequacy. Pathology here often looks like work inhibition, an inability to finish tasks, or deep feelings of inferiority. Sometimes, to compensate in adulthood, people chase money, power, or prestige, but often at the expense of intimacy. Adolescence, 13 to 20s. Freud revisits the genital stage, where earlier conflicts resurface. Erikson, however, defines this stage as identity versus role confusion. The struggle is to form a stable ego identity. If this fails, identity confusion develops. We might see over-identification with groups or cliques, loss of individuality, failure to separate from family, or disruptive behaviors. Pathology can show up as conduct disorders, even personality issues. Early adulthood, 20s to 40s. Erikson frames this as intimacy versus isolation. The challenge is forming deep, reciprocal relationships through vulnerability, compromise, and love. When unresolved, people avoid closeness, can't risk intimacy, and retreat into self-absorption. This isolation may lead to schizoid personality traits and detachment. Middle adulthood, 40s to 60s. The central conflict here is generativity versus stagnation. Ideally, we guide the next generation and contribute meaningfully to society. But if stagnation wins, people turn inward, sometimes toward escapism, through alcohol, infidelity, or a stereotypical midlife crisis. Both the individual and society suffer. Depression deepens, disappointment grows, and hopelessness sets in. Late adulthood, 60s to end of life. Finally, Erikson gives us integrity versus despair. This is about reflecting on life with acceptance, detachment, and wisdom. Integrity brings peace, but despair brings regret and fear of death. Poor health or lack of acceptance often fuels anxiety, hypochondria, or depression. At worst, unresolved despair can increase suicide risk. So, to summarize, unresolved conflicts in early stages often resurface as lifelong pathology. Freud focused on psychosexual drives, while Erikson emphasized psychosocial tasks and virtues. But together, they show us how early experiences echo throughout life. Clinically, understanding where a patient's struggles may originate, whether in trust, autonomy, guilt, or identity, gives us a roadmap. It's not just theory, it's practical for therapy and patient care. Thanks for tuning into today's episode. I hope this journey through Freud and Erikson's stages gave you a clearer sense of how development and pathology intertwine. Until next time, keep reflecting on the stages of growth, not just in theory, but in your own life as well. Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let us know what other topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes. If you found this episode helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel.